for the Spokane Public Library for September 19th, 2023. Looking at the Hilliard Library. All right, I will start with our, if there's any visitors, there's a sign-up sheet to sign up, as well as a sign-up sheet for public comment. Anybody wants to make public comment. And I will go ahead and read our land acknowledgement. All Spokane Public Library buildings sit on the traditional homelands of the four bands of the Spokane Tribe of Indians: Upper Band, Middle Band, Lower Band, and Chirila Band. Since time immemorial, the Spokane Tribe of Indians have lived and cared for these grounds, identifying themselves as flesh of the earth. We pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging, who show gratitude to the land, river, and peoples who have been fishing, hunting, harvesting, and gathering here for generations. May we learn from one another's stories so that we may nurture the relationship of the people of the Spokane tribes and to all those who share this land. All righty. We have a proposed agenda that is ready for adoption unless there are any changes.
I'd just like to change the order under new business, moving 13B to the very end of new business, please.
Okay. All right. Remind me if I missed that one. Sorry. Okay, any other changes? All right, we'll consider the agenda adopted as modified. So the first action item is approval of the August 2023 board minutes.
So moved.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, it passes unanimously. And the next action item is approval of the August 2023 bills and contributions.
I move that we approve the August 2023 bills and contributions in the amount of $1,084,443.81.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, motion passes. And now we are ready for the finance report. Nicole.
Thank you. Before I dive in, I do want to introduce Minnie Kwong, our senior accountant. She's visiting with us today. She'll be attending a lot of the board meetings while we go through our bond projects. She's heavily involved with that process, as well as me, now that Penny has retired. So just want to welcome her, and she's a rock star. So for the August 2023 financial update for library operations, our cash and investments trend. So as of August month end, the library has the ability to pay 168 days of operating costs. Our cash and investments balance is currently $6,991,801. That does include our reserve for capital and is net of our encumbrances. For the expenditure trend, expenses for August were $923,916, and 73% of that amount was for personnel. Our capital books and materials were purchased in the amount of $72,573. Our security guard services were $35,473. Utilities costs were $29,873. We did have an expense toward our network cable upgrade project. That's a rollover from 2022. We paid $23,233 for that. That's a progress billing. That there is an offset there, which is an E-rate discount. And that covers 80% of that. The interfund charges were $9,413, and then we also issued our first tuition reimbursement. That was for 3 different people, and that was an amount of $8,495. Are there any questions on operations before I move to the bond? Okay. So for the bond update, as far as the obligations executed in August, we had none, so that's pretty basic there. So remaining budgets on August 31st, there's a little graph showing here, about $1,829,408. This does not yet account for the interest earnings that will be pulled into the budget as they're earned. As we approach toward the end of the year, we will be moving all of our investment balance just into cash so that we will no longer accrue any interest, because we're going to need to fully encumber all available funds by the end of the year. So we also, so at August, we have a total of 9 open contracts. There's a list of all of the vendors for that. We've currently got 11 non-furniture open purchase orders. And we do have 37 open furniture and shelving purchase orders, which are for Central, South Hill, and Indian Trail. And for business office updates, so at the end of August, the city released the 2023 fixed asset inventory list. So over the next few months, we're going to be working with staff at various branches to complete that inventory audit and coordinate site visits. That does have a December deadline. Minnie also works very hard on that process as well. It's a pretty big task, especially with a lot of the things that we've purchased in recent years, as you know. And then with the retirement of Penny, we now have a vacant full-time position available for the business office. So we do plan to start recruiting for that soon. And they will be very heavily focused on payroll, among other things. That will be the primary objective. That's all. Thank you.
All right, any questions for Nicole?
Well, how long do you think it's gonna take to replace Penny?
I have to replace them. That's an easy one.
What's her background, or is there her background?
The person that we'll be hiring with the business office, we don't know yet. So we're currently working on that job description, and then we will start recruiting hopefully in October. So, but we would like a background in payroll, preferably. Yes, thank you.
All right, any other questions? All right, thank you, Nicole. All right, next on the agenda is the chairman's report, and I don't have a report today, so we'll move right along to the executive director report. Andrew?
All right, thank you. I have submitted a written report and I'll go over a few highlights. One, Karis and I have been in discussion with Thrive, who is housing for refugee population coming into Spokane. We'll be hearing about that partnership potential a little bit later tonight. Also, I attended the Latah Valley Summit. This is a group of citizens that are trying to make change in their area, which is off of the 195. A more and more populated area with not a whole lot of infrastructure. So it's a group that's trying to coordinate and get that buy-in around there. They did express some excitement about our library kiosk that's being now installed at the Yokes. So they've also been using that machine as well. I also attended a quarterly meeting on the City School Park Library Partnership, and we're starting to talk more about what it would look like in 2024. I'll be meeting again this week with that group and bringing Amanda into that conversation because we want to talk about what joint communication would look like around a measure where all, there's 2 school measures that would be on the ballot. If City Council puts our measure on the ballot in February, then that's 3. There's also some talk possibly of parks being on that ballot as well. So what does that communication look like out to the public? And is it a full partnership between all 3 entities or does it just lie with school library? But more details on that as we're getting through the talks with that. For our DEI efforts over the past few months, we watched and discussed the documentary, I Am Not Your Negro. We also hosted 2 cultural celebrations at the Central Library. Jason and his team did a phenomenal job in navigating that. It was both tacos and tequila and the root experience. Over 5,000 folks came through the doors during those days, so I would say pretty successful. Looking forward to more of those types of events in the future. We can utilize the entire outside of the Central Library and that beautiful plaza on the other side. There was no traffic incidents that we know of because of the event. But it really, I think it showed the public a lot of the potential of that space. Also, the new Startup Spokane website will launch soon, October 4th. Alina and Mark will be talking about that a little later. Also happy to announce that Derek Morrow has officially rejoined us as our safety and security manager, just starting a few weeks ago. You recall Derek previously worked at the Central Library as our security lead. So he's coming back into the fold and so excited to have him. Also, I mentioned Denise starting as our youth services manager, now here live and in person. So say hello to Denise. Very happy to have Denise here as well. And we continue to recruit for many new positions. Our special events coordinator to replace Samantha, who's now our HR director. Some custodial positions, a full stack developer for our Folio software, and a community technology coordinator as approved by the board a few months ago now. Also had some good promotions within the system. Chad Huddleston was promoted to a library assistant at Central, and Uvesha was promoted up to a library clerical assistant. And we also hired Tuha, who's a page at South Hill. So lots of ways keeping Sam busy in her new job with all this recruitment. Also wanted to highlight our star spotlight for August going to Shane Sponkler and Matthew Guerin for their quick action in cleaning up the mess from the bullet holes that we experienced at the South Hill Library. This happened overnight. It was a drive-by, we think, sort of experience. And caused some window damage and lots of glass to pick up. So thank you to Shane and Matthew for their action. And as far as the city of Spokane goes, Nicole and I went over our budget recommendation with them for 2024. No material feedback that would indicate either way. Sort of a neutral meeting, I would call it. So we're still waiting on information and guidance as to what they think that they'll be contributing. The mayor's budget is due August 2nd. So not a lot of time for October 2nd, what did I say? That's how I pronounce August. Sorry, yes, October 2nd would, yeah, be a more realistic date. But still, it's 2 weeks away. And we're still not seeing any, what's it gonna be is the big question. Yeah. So we'll see. They seem to be coming closer into, according to today's cabinet meeting, that 20 million is quickly shrinking with different strategies. So I think we're gonna be in a better position than we thought before. But it's just the not knowing that is an issue. There was in those conversations, there was some confusion around our levy language, where the city did not feel as if the language that we used on our ballot measures was appropriate for the allocation that we received. They thought that the allocation should be less. There should be less growth than the experience of the levy lived with. So Nicole and I sought out bond counsel. It's the city's bond counsel, and they clarified that we're okay. The bond language that we were using is perfectly suitable for what we're expecting. There may be some edits just based on legal language, just changing at the time. It's been 7 years, but we're exactly where we should be. So that was good to clear up that confusion or disagreement. With a change, and finally with a change in council member makeup, with council president Begg stepping down and council member Ulrich stepping in to replace Kinnear, who's now council president. We'll see some shuffling of council assignments, and my best guess is that council member Ulrich will be with the library for the next couple of months. So I met with him last week, big supporter, gets what we're doing, and if you've been paying attention in the community, he's done some really good work. So we're happy to have his mind at the table as well. So that's all I have. If there's any questions for me?
Questions for Andrew?
Have you guys partnered with parks before?
We have at the Liberty Park Library,
Okay.
as well as the Shabo Park Library.
Yeah.
So there is partnership elements there. You know, we basically do a lifetime lease of their land, and we put our facilities on that land.
Okay.
We've done some programmatic partnerships as well.
Yeah.
They are one of the users of our facilities that we allow for before hours, after hours access, and they'll do some of their programs out of there. So they've been a good partner in the past. But as far as programmatically what they're looking for on a ballot measure, you know, how does that fit in with the story, and we'll see what we can get together.
Yeah, we could be like a really strong trifecta.
It could. Well, last I talked with them, it was, they're aiming to update their neighborhood parks, which they haven't been updated in years.
Nope.
So I think that would resonate, especially with a lot of young families in the community. You know, so we'll see if what comes to the table from these meetings.
Yeah, like look at these libraries, I'm sure your parks look like this.
Exactly.
Of course they do.
Does parks have any involvement in like community gardens? Or is that like just like some, I know some of the parks have them.
I think some of the parks have them, but they sort of let the community groups,
Group does it and stuff. I'm just curious.
could be a
Something
connection.
we're talking to do.
Yeah.
And I had mentioned, you know, the opportunity for some program partnerships around there. The parks also, you know, with their urban forestry, they help out a lot with some of our programming, or, you know, even looking at, you know, the garden that we're looking at putting at Indian Trail. They've helped out with that too, so.
Alrighty, any other questions for Andrew? Okay, thank you, Andrew.
Thank you.
So next on our agenda is the council liaison report. Zach is not with us tonight, so we won't be having that. And next we have the communication report. Amanda.
Hi.
Hello.
So in front of you, you have the fall issue of Lilac City Local. So that is one major accomplishment. It's our second issue. We started publishing this in the summer. The cover story is about the recording studio and, more importantly, local band The Smokes that used our recording studio to record their album with Andy. Other notable stories in the article or in the magazine are A Day in the Life at Central that was written by a Central employee, Leonard Kransdorf, and also a really nice Q&A with Sharma that Sharma orchestrated with our Spokane as Reading author, Kim Fu. And many other great stories are in there. So hope you enjoy that, and that's also available online. We're, as Andrew mentioned, and as you will hear about from Alina, we're prepping to launch the Startup Spokane website and rebrand, and so you'll hear much more about that later today. Another really cool announcement that we have is we've been able to get a Google Ad grant for $10,000 per month in partnership with a company called Koyos, and basically Google provides ad grants for nonprofits, and so we were able to partner with Friends of the Library to get an authentication letter to allow us to advertise $10,000 per month on Google. And I mean, $10,000 per month, I mean, that's just unbelievable. At first, when Andrew asked me that, I was like, that can't be right, but it's $10,000 a month. So we've been doing that for just about a month now, so I don't have any results to share with you quite yet, but we're expecting hopefully some really good things out of that. We're finalizing the library kiosk wraps with Spokane Arts. We commissioned local artist Daniel Davis to hand illustrate these really beautiful wraps, and there's screenshots here below on your report of what those will look like. Each one will have a slightly different color palette, but they'll all have a unified look and feel of these very cute bookshelves, and I think they're going to be really eye-catching in the community. And then we also finished our first summer reading using Beanstack. Beanstack also funded by Friends of the Library. Kids and adults read over 611,000 minutes. We had 1,300 participants. almost 10,000 badges earned and 200 completions. So really exciting to start using Beanstack. And now that Denise is here, we're going to keep engaging with Beanstack, do more challenges, and activate that even more. I wanted to point out one really cool highlight on our social media. I think it was last month I was telling you about our top Facebook posts of the year, and we had these 2 really amazing posts. And then here we have another one that's our second highest post for the year on Facebook. It's over 20,000 reached, and it's this post here where you see Bataya in the picture, and it's about the overlap between library services and social services. So getting a lot of engagement on that topic as well, and that was exciting to see. We didn't have any earned media this month, which is notable, but nothing to be concerned about. And that concludes my report for the day. Any questions? Questions from me?
With your grant, is that like a large lift now for your team? You guys are a small but mighty team.
So part of it is partnering with this company called Koyos, who
Yeah.
helps activate those and has a dashboard, so
Okay,
so they can help with the lift.
okay. Sounds like you could, they would pay you for another staff member.
Oh, yeah, no.
It's a lot of money.
Yeah.
For how many months?
Indefinitely.
Wow.
Yeah. It's for nonprofits specifically, so they have to send their determination letter that they are 501c3 over to Google and submit it through them. It's not even up. I mean, it's just like not even up to 10,000, just like is 10,000. Pretty wild.
Who wrote that bit?
Yeah.
Wow. Excellent.
Mhm.
All right, any other questions? Thank you, Amanda. All right, and now we have our program report with Jason.
I'm gonna stand up. Prepare to be overwhelmed by text, so I apologize in advance. We talked a while back about the value score that we're using to kind of gauge the value and impact of our programming. We've been using that for a few months now, and what we were doing is you create a score based on a little questionnaire of the value, and then you multiply it by your attendance at the event, and that was your value score. What we found out was that was an attempt to say attendance isn't everything, but all that did was increase the importance of attendance. So when you have an event like Tacos and Tequila, which had 5,000 people, and you're multiplying it by 37, it ends up being 135,000. And then you have events that are 8, and then you have this chart that is just a straight line, except for that one event up here and down here. So it really made it hard to use in any sort of way. So Karis and I kind of tried to recalibrate what we're doing on that. So we've made some changes to how we're going to use the value score. I'm going to talk about that today. This is a real exciting. Have you ever heard of square root scaling? Anybody?
I never wanted
Yeah,
to.
Mark has. I've talked to Mark about it. So what this is we're trying to make sure that we're not overemphasizing attendance versus the value of the program, but attendance is important as well, because you can have a really valuable program that no one shows up at, and it's not really doing what you want it to do. So square root scaling is taking the attendance number and you do the square root of it, which is pretty easy to say. I can't explain exactly why they do it. It's done all the time in statistics. It basically means that you have your value of individuals goes down as they go. So if you have the 10th person is going to be more valuable to you than the 100th person. You're not going to keep getting the same value out of it, because that's what we're doing here. And also, we're implementing a control chart that will show where those things land, and I'll explain that here in a bit, but let's keep moving to more and more text. So yeah, we were finding that it was still overvaluing attendance over quality, but we didn't want to completely discount attendance, because that was one option we had was, okay, attendance doesn't matter. Let's just, the value score is all that matters. We have made it so that there's a minimum score that you get. You have to get a 7 in order to do the program. And if it's a 7, it means it's a great program, but then we still want to know, how's that program performing? So it does reduce the extreme attendance numbers without completely dismissing the influence of them. And then instead of multiplying that score or your attendance by the value score, we're adding it instead, which is actually really smart because it makes it, all the numbers are much more easy to manage and you can still see the relationship between the outstanding programs and the ones that aren't performing as well. You can read all this later if you want. Go ahead. So then on this chart, I want to show you here, I think you have a chart in your, that's updated on this, but really what we do is we come up with the mean. What's the average number of the value score, adjusted value score for that month? And then you have the standard deviation, which is the average amount above and below the distances. So what we want to do is most things should fall within those two lines. And the things that rise above it are ones like, oh, that one outperformed everything else. What is that? It gives us a way to look at those and highlight those events. But the ones that fall below are the more important ones because those are the ones that we can look at and say, okay, this was a great program, but one person showed up. Did we do it on the wrong day? Is it at the wrong time? Should we adjust how we're marketing it? What can we do? Or we've tried it 4 times, it doesn't work. It's a great idea, but let's toss it and do something else.
Sorry, Jason, I forgot to share it with
okay.
our,
It's such an exciting
YouTube.
slide, but it broke the screen.
Too many words.
So you can see scores that go within are programs that are performing unexpected, upper control limits are outstanding, below is programs that might need attention. That to be said, every program that will happen will have met the minimum standards for our programming. So none of them are bad programs. It's just why is it not performing as expected? So let's move on here. Kind of explain this, but it allows us really to quickly identify these things instead of trying to dig through that massive chart I've been sending you guys every month to overwhelm you with more text. It's really every month we're going to report on here's what the average value score is and here are the programs that kind of fell above and below. And it's just as we adjust those programs that are low, the idea is that we can shift the entire chart up. So that means going to hopefully rise each month. That shows that the entirety of our programming is increasing in value. And you can do that by messing with some of the lower performing ones. There are some complications on it. Right now, with this method, if no one shows up, but it has a high value score, you're adding 0 to that number. So you're still getting a number out of it. So I got to figure out how to take that out. Also, one-on-one, like Mark's doing business consultations or one-on-ones, there's always going to be one person there, or Andy doing music lessons. You're going to see this chart. That's just a long, long line. That's the exact same. If I put it all together like I was,
is this what you wanted?
sure.
No. I can go back easily.
No, that's fine.
Okay.
So you can see these like long flat lines here. These are because Andy did 40 music lessons. So there's 40 points plotted there, but they're all the exact same score. So it's kind of what was happening is we were having Andy report one stat of music lessons 40, here's the score, but it kind of skewed, it was different because I was saying that the 40th person was getting a worse lesson than the first person, but really every person hopefully is getting a lesson that's
He was
equal
dead
value.
by 40.
Yeah. Mark. So what also this is what I'm feeding all the information into, and so this is our attendance. It does the square root there for me. I don't have to do that. I can't. I'm a librarian. And then it adds it to the value score, which we've already pre-established before the event happens, and that gets you your adjusted value score. It plots on here. It shows you this month our average value score for all programs was 17.48, which is higher than what it was when I plotted it last month. But this outlier here probably shifted a lot of things. This is Tacos and Tequila, which scored a 97 in this new. So it still shows you this was a very high attended program, a very high value score program. But if this chart was based on the old numbers, this number would be 135,000. So everything would just be a little line down at the bottom. What's great about this is it automatically highlights, so anything that comes up in red on here is something that outperformed the standard deviations up. So this is a henna painting class that scored a 28 in value score. 76 people came to it, so really that was a successful thing. If it's yellow, it means it fell below the line. This yellow one right here is a genealogy drop-in, which scores an 8, which meets our minimum qualifications, but one person showed up, so it became a 9. This number here probably was skewed a lot by this high thing here. So if that wasn't there, I'm sure that the standard deviation below would be a little bit lower. But there's quite a few programs here, like gardening programs. The Touch a Truck event was a big program. We got a lot of attendees there and it already had a high score. And then there are some other ones that fell below. Somehow, a couple story times fell below because there's low attendance on them. But it's something to look at. It gives us something with managers to evaluate with their staff. So Denise can look at some of the children's ones and see if there's anything there that's concerning, or is that, oh, it was, of course, no one came because there was an ice storm that day.
I was trying to find the tacos and there it is.
Yeah, so Tacos and Tequila, you can see got a 97 on the score. 5,000 people had 27 value score. That event was pretty spectacular at the library. If anybody came down, it was stage on there, out on the plaza. So the backdrop is the falls and the gorge there. Lots and lots of people coming to hear a lot of bands from all over the world. There's been performers from Mexico, from Spain, from Wenatchee. But yeah, this is what we'll be trying to report on here. And there's some stuff I want to iron out of it. Like I said, if you got a 0, you still are showing up in the middle of it. So it doesn't really help us there, but I'm sure I can find a way to make Excel spit those in a different place.
Is there, in arriving at the value score, or I guess I'm just wondering if you have had any thoughts on wanting to be accurate in the prediction of how many people are supposed to come to an event? Like, well, we think this event is, it's appropriate for this room because we think about 30 people are going to come. And then if you only get, 5, then that's a sign there's, or is there any kind of correlation that way with what you predict the event?
The way
should draw?
with the prediction, it's based on how we're designing the program. So if you design a one-on-one music lesson, obviously that's one person to show up.
Right.
If you're designing a small group thing, usually that means there's materials involved in it. A lot of times we have pre-registration for those, so it kind of controls it. It does mean if you're predicting an event's going to be 15 people and 30 show up, it lowers the quality for everybody, so that is a problem. But the other one, if you predict 100 people and 10 show up, it's going to show up in the value score because you were making it a bigger program, you already have less points off the bat, and so the less people is going to kind of exacerbate that and show you, okay, you said you thought this was going to be a big program, 2 people showed up, 4 people showed up. But it would be something to look at, like, okay, we were wrong about the attendance on this. Maybe we can modify this into a small group thing because there are people that showed up. We can change the way we're teaching there. We can be more hands-on than we thought we could.
Do you assign the value score before or after the program?
Ideally before, because we want to make sure before it gets onto our calendar, before we've done anything, it should have run through this to know if we're doing it or not. Because if it's below a 7, we either have to improve the program in some way, or in the case right now is figure out, is that person that's running it through the system accurately scoring it? Because we found a lot of people are really hard on themselves when they're doing this. Like, oh, my program doesn't do it. I mean, yes, it does. We have adjusted the value score. We've added more questions based on some comments from the youth staff. This was created with adult programming in mind more than youth programming. I'm going to have Denise take a real deep dive into it with her staff and see what is there things that we aren't valuing that should be there for them. But yeah, you have the program idea, you enter it into the system, and it gives you your score. And that if you don't have a 7, you're supposed to either start from scratch, abandon that idea, or say, oh, I'm going to add these elements to my program in order to get it to reach that score.
Would you analyze, after a program to see if the value score should change based on, I don't know, feedback or?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a whole part of this. It's going to be constantly changing because we're kind of building it as we're building the plane as we're flying it right now. And there's tons of, like we already added for team programming. Team programming has a lot of elements that aren't really applicable to other programming, like building long-term friendships is a part of that. And physical activity is a part of the program, and we weren't valuing those in any way. So working with Gina, our team librarian, we added a few extra questions in there that will get them up. But eventually, hopefully there's enough there that if you don't score a 7, it means that your program is just not good enough. It's not that we're not valuing something. But I think we're a little ways from getting there.
How often will you make those changes? Will it be quarterly? Will it be-
As they come up, I kind of talk about whether that's something, so it's kind of on a monthly basis if people are having trouble. We went through everything that was falling below a 7, or I did, and went and talked with that person and walked their program through it. A lot of them, they just weren't giving themselves points where they should have. And some, we just had to either change what the program was, or in Gina's case, like they have a lot of programs that are teens that just come to hang out and do things in the room. And on this, it wasn't really reflecting the value of that in any way. So, but I mean, it's all going to change as we go. So that's one thing, is like as we add more points available, it does kind of, the relationship between each month is not 100% apples to apples, but it will be eventually set in stone. I think it's a good start to get our programming even better than it already is. And we have really fantastic programming as it is. So it's not like we need a huge boost to make it better.
I feel like I need to retire so that I can attend more library programs.
Yeah, we did. I can't remember how many it was this month, but almost 300 again or something like that. I need to go back to college and take statistics classes. It took me forever to understand what any of that meant.
You faked it very well.
Oh, thanks. Any other questions?
I think adding tequila to any program makes
It does.
All right, excellent. Thank you, Jason. Any other questions for Jason? Thank you. All right, and now we are moving on to new business. And the first item, 13A, Capital Bond Fund, final acceptance of the Helvetica contract. Nicole.
Thank you, appreciate it. All right, so some background on this one. This agenda item is essentially to request the board to grant final acceptance of our Helvetica contract. So in May 2020, the board approved the execution of this contract. It was a public works agreement for fabrication and installation of our signage and wayfinding. So that the total amount for that ended up being $442,099, which does include sales tax. So the final acceptance, it initiates the public works closure process. So basically, after approval of this, Minnie and I will go through and do a notice of completion to the state. And then the 3 agencies are then, they're notified to begin their process. So the Employment Security Department, they will go through the payroll records for Helvetica and any of their subcontractors. Department of Revenue, so they're just essentially doing overall public works compliance with that. And then Labor and Industries as far as the rates that the contractor paid at the beginning. So once their analysis is complete, then they will send us, we will receive 3 different letters. At that point, we can then pay retainage on that.
All right, any questions about the final acceptance for Nicole? All right, we're requesting a motion to grant final acceptance of the project under the contract with HUD.
So moved.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Any opposed? No, hearing none, motion passes. Thank you. Thank you, Nicole.
Thank you.
And now we are moving on to 13C, winter staff event, early library closure with Samantha.
Hi, we are requesting that we are closing all the libraries early. That's 4 p.m. on that Friday, December 8th. We are normally open until 5 p.m., so it's an hour early. Staff will have the option that day to attend the annual employee winter event.
So moved.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes.
You'll all be invited. Not just because the motion passed.
Yeah, it was fun last year.
That's true.
Enjoyed it. All right, and now we have 13D, Startup Spokane rebrand. Elaine and Laura.
Before Paris. Okay. All right.
Hello, everyone. Mark Pond, Business Research Librarian for the Spokane Public Library. And Alina?
Yes, I want to make sure to share my screen with
Okay, all right, I'll wait till we get started.
I will be the pointer.
Okay, all right. So I will try to give you in about 5 or 6 minutes a recap of the last 17 years of my life. And here we go.
Because some of them will be like multiple bullet points.
I'm
Okay.
great at multitasking.
Okay.
This is pretty much my life. Yeah. All right. So you'll notice lack of wall of text.
Intentional.
Somebody else's presentation. But quick recap. So go ahead. April 2006, moved back to town. I've been working for the Seattle Public Library up to that point, and this job was opened. Both my wife and I grew up in Kettle Falls, so this was getting back here to closer to family. It's a great move. From 2006, next slide please, to I would say roughly 2012. Those were the bleak years for me professionally. I sat at the reference desk at the downtown library waiting for business questions to come my way. Complete radio silence, literally years without a business question. I'm not exaggerating, I'm kind of sad to say it, but financial crisis, 2009, 2010, city was starting to look at hiring freezes, laying people off, and I'm like, if I had to lay someone off, it'd probably be that business librarian guy who hasn't answered a business question in a couple of years. So kind of had a bit of an existential crisis professionally. But this is not, it's not going to be a career for me. It's not working. So the model that libraries relied on literally for hundreds, if not 1,000 years, was waiting for people to come to us. We have something valuable, we hand it off to them. That just crumbled right about the time where I was taking this job. So good news, starting around 2012, Startup Spokane was a program that was funded through Greater Spokane Incorporated. Kohl's backed it, I think Washington Trust also threw some money in, Avista, so a number of funders for that. But it was designed to be kind of the front door for all entrepreneurial activity around town. And I was part of that, and it was just a great referral source for me. Often, if someone had a business idea, they would go to Startup Spokane, then Startup Spokane would say, go talk to the folks at the library. They've got some tools that can help you with this. Kind of following on that, in 2014, we started in conjunction with the Spokane County Library District, the SpokaneBusiness.org page, because what I realized between 2012 and 2014, when I would go out, do presentations, it's always a mix of city residents, county residents, and there's still massive confusion about who gets access to what in terms of library resources. So we tried to pull all of our stuff together, put it on one page. That went live in 2014. Next click, please. And 2020, specifically March of 2020. There are a whole bunch of other things swirling around in the world, but Startup Spokane, funding for it, I think that there were some weird political things that I'm not privy to and don't really care about, but funding for it dried up and the program just kind of slid into the ditch, and it's been lying there pretty much ever since. So next slide, please. 2023, we were awarded the grant. We've been kind of in discussion with the Washington State Micro Enterprise Association. They're headquartered over on the west side of the state, but they help organizations that help businesses. So they gave us a grant to redo not only our SpokaneBusiness.org webpage, but also the taking over of the Startup Spokane program and their webpage and smushing them together. We kind of somewhat got the cart ahead of the horse in that we were redesigning this page because it took us until July of this summer before GSI finally signed off on like, yes, library, you can have this program. It's yours to take it and do with it as you wish. So I had some rather sleepless nights tossing and turning thinking, oh my God, we got this grant money, we're doing the work, and we don't have the go ahead from the organization that actually owns the site to do it, but it all worked out. So it all works just beautifully. Next slide, please. All right, so the question that came up several times as we were going through this whole process is why even bother? Why would we even try to take over the Startup Spokane program? It's been pretty much just in hibernation since 2020. It's pretty easy to come up with program names and websites. So why even jump through the hoops to try to make this happen? And next slide, please. There are a couple of reasons for that. So one, the library's been involved in this program ever since it started up. So wanted to continue that. Next slide. Also, there's a fair amount of brand equity out there for the program and the name of it. It's still pretty well known out there in the business community. So I didn't want to just walk away from that. And the other piece is that I didn't want the conversation around town being, why is the library just going rogue and going off and doing their own thing and leaving Startup Spokane kind of floundering? So that's a story that I didn't want floating around out there. That I wanted to be positioned as like, yeah, Spokane Public Library. They took something that was kind of ailing, pumped some life back into it, and now we're rolling again. So that was one of the big reasons. Next, please. And like I already mentioned, it's a perfect setup for folks to find their way to the library. And it's often people who have some really warm, soft spot in their heart for public libraries, but it may have been decades, literally, since they've set foot in one of our buildings. So that, I think, is working out really well, where it gets us to a place where we can get our hooks into a whole bunch of folks that otherwise we might be missing. Next, please. All right, and I already mentioned this, just having one place for our startups to come to get access to the tools, the resources, the connections that they need to get their business up and running. Super valuable. Like I said, I've been doing my job now since 2006, and I just now kind of feel like I have a pretty firm handle on who does what around town. The SBDC does this, Snaps Women Business Center does that, the SBA does that, SCORE does this. There's a whole long list of acronyms out there, and for our startups to try to navigate that without some roadmap, it's really daunting. So very valuable tool for a resource that we're able to offer there. Next, please. And also, it's what we do. We share stuff. And we're the perfect community organization to house these resources. If they were within the four walls of, say, GSI, they have their membership issues where they're trying to just provide benefit to their membership, whereas we can really spread it around town and make it much more equitable and accessible. Next, please. I don't often say this, and I hesitate to say it on camera. So my object of just kind of admiration and love and affection is for the library as an organization and entity. I'm just blown away that there's an organization that's just built around sharing stuff in town. I think if we were to just have this idea out of the blue and try to take that to the voters today without our couple hundred years of background and trust that we've built up, that'd be a really tough sell. So on that front, I think it's really valuable to have the business community as a political backer for what we're trying to do. And I think for better or worse, the business community tends to have outsized influence and voice in political decisions here in town. So if we can get them to be fans of the library, I think it bodes really well for us. All right, next, please. Okay, so that's the last 17 years. Now kind of looking forward for the next foreseeable little bit. Next, please. Okay, so kind of already touched on this, but with this redesign of the Startup Spokane webpage, it's taking the assets, strengths of Spokane Public Library, the Spokane County Library District, Startup Spokane, and that SpokaneBusiness.org page, putting them all onto one platform, which I'm pretty excited about. Next. One of the other pieces about Startup Spokane that I think is really going to be valuable is that historically, Startup Spokane, it was a pretty downtown-centric program. I don't know that they ever did any programming outside of just the downtown core. So working with the County Library District, we're putting together a slate of presenters and classes, and we'll share those. So we'll do a program at the Hive, we'll do one maybe at the Shadle, then the County Library System District, they can take that same group of presenters, take them out to Cheney, put them out in the valley, so that we can spread the news around town a little bit more. All right, next please. I'll throw that one out there. I'm a one-man band. Next, please. All right. One thing that we're building into the new version of the website, and it's really lacking in the current SpokaneBusiness.org page, which is currently just an alphabetical list of all the tools that we subscribe to. They're business focused. And it's a really impressive set of tools, but it's impossible to navigate just on your own if you're just stumbling onto it. So with the new site, we're building in more kind of a roadmap and trail guide, whatever you want to call it, where you can say, hey, if you're a startup, here are the things you should be thinking about, and here are the library tools that can help you with that particular step along the way. Because there are any number of checklists out there where they'll say, here are the things you should do to start a business, and then we'll just have a bullet point like, write a business plan. And then that's an entire multi-month process with a whole bunch of different facets to it. So trying to really clarify that and make it easier to navigate. All right, next. All right, and finally, the goal with all of this is to make Spokane the most equitable place to start, run, and grow a business. If we can do that, if we can be driving through Tulsa and somebody says, you're from Spokane? Oh, you've got some awesome business stuff. And we're winning. And even if we hit Britsville and they say that, we're still winning. But still, that's kind of my guide star right there. That's what we're shooting. All right, and I think that's the last bit of my spiel. Turn it over to Alina, who has been doing the heavy lifting on the marketing and the web design and the logo design, and when I say heavy lifting, I mean all of the lifting. So, Alina, take it away.
So similar to what Mark had said with the brand equity of Startup Spokane, we really wanted to stick with the brand equity that Startup Spokane has been well known for. So a couple of images of what we were working with before. So this isn't a bad website at all. In fact, it's really nice and helpful. And this is currently on the Greater Spokane Incorporated website today. You can find this right now if you went there. And then Amanda, if you want to go to the next slide as well, this is an example of the Spokane Business website. So similar to what Mark said, it's literally just an A to Z resource list of all of the different databases. So it's really lacking in a lot of guidance and structure when it comes to helping startups in their process of starting their businesses. So with that being said, I think we're going to go out of this and pull up the new website example for you.
Let's pull it up here. Okay, sorry. There's a PowerPoint. There's Jason's PowerPoint still back here. There we go. Okay.
So we've been working with Houdini Interactive. We went out and got some bids from different organizations throughout town to see kind of, what would be the best bang for our buck, who has the best image that fits with what Mark does and the future of how he sees the Spokane Business Services moving forward. So we've been working with them, and they've developed this really incredible website. We're really excited to launch it. It is not live yet. So this is still in the back end of things. And what you can really see and what we want to emphasize is this Get Started button. Ooh. Oh, wow. This Get Started button right here. And so, yeah, we want to just make that. That is really the checklist that people are going to be going to when they go to the Spokane Business website, where it'll show them, okay, how do you come up with like a name? How do you want to, what do we say? Know your industry, know your market, funding, all of those different things that Mark helps people with in their startup process. So, and then also one of the other things we want to, so this gets started and this need help finding the right resource, that takes people to the same page. So we've got multiple avenues to direct people into the same checklist. And then we also have Rather Talk with a Professional. So this one-on-one support that you're going to get with the SELD team, Spokane County Library District, their business services team, and then also with Mark and our team. And then if you scroll a little bit longer, you'll see just kind of a navigation list of all of these different database resources. So all of these, if you were to go in as an individual and purchase some of these databases, you'd have to purchase some of them. But because we have access to them through the library, our patrons have access through the library. So these are really helpful tools that people can do a lot of research. They can build business plans. They can do all of the things that, you know, Mark was talking about earlier. So we have a ton of options. And then of course, at the very bottom, we've got those quick links and some sponsorships. So part of the sponsorships, and I don't know if we mentioned Numerica, but Numerica was definitely a portion of part of the grant that we received. Was a certain percentage of that was funded by Numerica. So we're really grateful for them and part of this website. And then in addition to this website, we wanted to really hype up the excitement around Startup Spokane. So we're throwing a big launch party, which is what you have on your desk. See, Mary, I told you we'd come to it eventually. And so it's on October 4th from 4:30 to 7 p.m. at the Hive. And we're gonna, it's more of an open house, get to know, who was a part of this project, have some casual speeches. Mark will be there, and we have a whole bunch of different things to showcase that's part of this program. And then, if you want to go to the next one, I love how this is still here. So, so anyways, these are a whole bunch of different of the marketing elements. So you'll see this is a banner that we've ordered 2 of so that SCLD can have one, we can have one. Shirts, which I really wanted to get in today, but to quick order 2 shirts was like $150, and that's just way too much. So anyways, you'll see these at the grand opening. The stickers that you have in front of you, we're going to be handing those out at the rebrand party. The invite, and then a brochure that is kind of an open brochure that talks about all of the different services and how to access the services through Spokane County Library District or through Spokane Public Library. So a lot of that brand equity that I talked about can then funnel through this new brand, and we can really get become well known in the business community with this really popping brand, which was created by Houdini Interactive as well. So I believe the next slide is just questions. Does anyone have any questions? I know it's kind of a lot, but we're happy to. Yeah, Gary.
You had me at We Share Stuff. Seriously, because that's one of the things that at least I've found over the last dozen years that I've been around here is that sometimes when people have a really good idea, they hoard it. And then all of a sudden it either rises or doesn't. And the library is that one place where you can find collaboration. So I think, again, We Share Stuff is, I would keep that in your back pocket, but I think that this is really not only great for the community, but it's great for the library to be part of. So,
yeah, totally. It's very exciting to be a part of this program and to launch it. Will be, and then the launch party, of course, was sponsored by Progress.
Yes.
Everyone's been so excited to dive in and support this initiative. They're just excited to see some forward movement. Mark, I'm glad you didn't give up in between years.
Me too.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions? All right, wonderful, thank you.
I'm hoping that we get rid of my writing, but I just got rid of the actual.
Now we are moving to the item that got moved to the end, the sale of the Nevada Street property. That's Karis.
It kind of looks like there's a sad face on it.
That's what we're feeling.
All right, so
It is time for my monthly update on the Nevada property. Next slide, please. So just to give a little bit of review, we own an undeveloped plot of land on Nevada Street that has sat vacant for 20 plus years, causing us all kinds of grief. In February 2023, we received your approval to take that piece of property off the real estate market and proceed with design and permitting of site improvements. In June 2023, we shared with you the design concepts and requested approval to move forward with the formal bid process, which we were then allowed to do. Just for your reference, again, just want to stress, we own a vacant dirt lot. Next slide, please.
With a nice sewer pipe.
It's got a beautiful sewer pipe. So just as a reminder, what we were trying to do is to find a place for our 24/7 library kiosk, to create a community garden space and a large gravel parking lot. That was kind of the idea behind the revitalization of this space. Next slide, please. And we were ultimately hoping to work towards another building very similar to the Hive. Somewhere in the neighborhood of $6 million in today's dollars is what we were looking at. So it was outside of this bond, but we were looking to the future. How do we utilize the space on the 24/7, where the 24/7 library is, to create some co-located interest with the eventual desire to get here. Through partnership and serendipity, we didn't expect for this to happen, but we were approached by a partner, Thrive International, who work on providing housing for refugees. And they threw out this kind of crazy idea, would you ever consider putting some housing on this Nevada property, because the programming of the space seems kind of interesting. So we started to have some conversations, and really quickly, they kind of gelled together into this concept that showed missions of two organizations that were aligning really well to make something much better than we had previously anticipated. Thrive International is led by Mark Finney. Mark, if you want to join me up here. Mark is formerly with World Relief, which is pretty well established in the community. And he started Thrive International to meet some other needs, which he'll tell you about in a second. We're currently working with Thrive on some of our community conversations, trying to explore the experience of Ukrainian refugees in Spokane. And just so you can have a second to learn a little bit about our partner, I'm going to introduce Mark, and hit the next slide, please. And I'll tell you about Thrive International and what they're trying to do.
Great. Well, I got a few little handout cards. I didn't bring that for everybody, so you'll have to share or visit our website. But yeah, thanks, Karen. I'm excited to be here for a whole lot of reasons, and I'll try to keep it short. One of the main reasons is that I live just a few blocks away from the South Hill Library on Perry Street, just about 5 blocks up and a block in the neighborhood. And I can just attest that for me and my family, it's been a huge gift to move into a community about 8 years ago, where we've got a phenomenal public library system. So thank you all for the amazing things you've done, and it keeps getting better. So like Kara shared, I worked for about 6 years with World Relief here in Spokane. 5 years, I was the director there. And then just a little less than 2 years ago, I decided it was time for me to explore the world of startups. So I started a new nonprofit, and that happened 3 weeks before the Ukraine war started. So what I thought I was going to be doing with a nice, stable, controlled growth to help serve refugees with youth programs, women's programs, and creating more affordable housing in the community turned into, hey, we've got hundreds of families moving here who don't fit into the traditional refugee categories, and they don't have access to services. So if you've driven by on the freeway, there's a former hotel down by the hospital that we were able to get into with the help of the Commerce Department of the state of Washington. And so we're running a transitional housing program out of there. We have about 200 refugees living there at any given time, and in the last year and a half, we've had about 600 people we've hosted there. So we're excited about that. But that exemplifies a piece of of what I've learned working with refugees for the past 8 years. And that is access is everything. And the biggest barrier to access in Spokane is not the transportation system, it's not language, those are issues, but the biggest barrier right now is housing availability. And for people who come here with no credit history, no rental history, they're getting entry-level jobs, it's very difficult for them to find housing that puts them in access to other resources. So we've been really looking at creating strategic places that we could develop more housing. And so looking along the transit corridors in Spokane was a key piece. And as we reached out to the city of Spokane, they said, you should talk to the public libraries and see about that lot on North Nevada. So we did, and they said, we're thinking of doing that community garden. I think the first thing I said was, what if we put 3 floors of housing underneath the community garden and share parking lot, which isn't exactly the plans that we are working on at this point. But the idea of a partnership is huge because for us, the key that's making the Thrive Center work really well for Ukrainians is that we have affordable housing in a great location. We also have about 2,000 square feet of conference rooms that we use as a multicultural community center. So every day we have activities in there, whether it's volunteers who are doing Zumba exercise classes. We had a women's only party in the pool where we covered all the windows so ladies from Afghanistan and other parts of the Middle East could have a pool party. Some of them had never been in a pool before. And then the Chaz Clinics is in there on a weekly basis, and I can go on and on and on. But giving folks a place they can afford for 3 to 6 months in that location, and then providing services by having community providers come in, it's been a beautiful partnership. And so even, as Karis mentioned, as we're doing educational activities at the downtown library, there's already some natural synergy. Our stated mission is to empower multicultural communities to thrive, which is sort of almost just like a rearranging of some of the words in your own mission statement. So I'm very excited about the partnership. Be happy to share more in detail about exactly what we do. But basically, I think there's a really neat synergy here between what you all are doing in creating communities and providing access to the huge pool of resources that you all have, while we're also welcoming a unique population to the city who doesn't know anything about the resources that are here, but come with a real deep hunger to succeed, a hunger to understand the culture, a hunger to learn how to start businesses and learn the language and make friends. And I think that everything I've experienced in the library makes me feel like this is a really, really neat partnership. I will say one other thing as it relates to housing. Housing is kind of its own world. And so at World Belief, we didn't own or manage housing. But a couple of years ago, before I left World Belief, I'd actually started sort of a private development group. And so over the last 2 years, we tested the model that we're talking about using here, which is a kind of a mixed income private development model. So not HUD or LIHTC or any of those other complex government funded approaches, but actually getting private investors to charitably contribute to projects that allow us to build it more efficiently and without much less red tape and much more quickly. So we could go into all those details more, but for now, I'll just say that I'm really excited to be here and excited for the possibility of working with you all to make a really big impact in this part of the community.
One of the places that I think is really interesting is, as mentioned, we've owned this dirt lot for 20 plus years. And being able to offer this dirt plot to Thrive as a blank canvas allows them to put their money more towards the direct construction of housing rather than the acquisition of property, which was a big motivator for Thrive to partner with us in the first place.
Right.
So they're able to put more of their money towards their mission, allowing us to be the platform for what they're trying to do. All right, next slide, please.
Do you want me to stay up here or sit down?
Why don't you sit down?
I'll sit down.
And we'll have questions, and I'll have you chime in. So just as an overview of the new design concept, so you'll remember previously what we had was this side of the property was a field of pollinator flowers with the dome centered in the middle. And down here we had a couple of greenhouses and a chicken coop and then a parking lot with a 24/7 library over here. So we've seen some modifications here. In squishing this thing around, we still maintain our access to the dome and the greenhouse for the community in actually probably a much more sustainable model, just kind of making it a smaller footprint and a little bit easier for us to manage. And dedicating a lot of space to a 45-unit apartment complex and tons of shared parking. So you've got parking space for everybody in the apartment complex, as well as enough parking to service people who would be coming for library programming here. You've still got the 24/7 library dispenser. So essentially what we've done here is kind of recreate the Gonzaga Family Haven model but with the addition of these community garden elements. And you'll remember that one of the criteria for placing a 24/7 kiosk was being co-located with another amenity. And when we approved this, placing it here, that hadn't happened yet. So our whole idea for putting the gardens here was to create a co-located amenity. And now with Mark and Thrive, we're able to put a whole community onto that spot. The other thing I want to call your attention to is down here, and this is kind of the important part for us and the reason why it makes good business sense to do this. There's going to be community space in this apartment complex that will be accessible to our community members like the Hive. So it's kind of a way for us to deliver on that meeting space, collaboration space that a Hive 2.0 would have done, but at virtually none of the cost. Next slide, please. So what we want to do in order to make this work is enter into an MOU with Thrive International that allows us to sell the property to them at a nominal cost and then lease back the library space for our usage. We also are talking about putting an easement on the land to guarantee continued public access to the greenhouses, but doing it this way, kind of like Mark was saying, by bringing in the private partnership, is allows us to move a lot faster. If we take this property and subdivide it, it will be caught up in city processes for probably quite a long time. And this allows also Thrive to take ownership of the entire parcel, which helps them to leverage more when they're trying to seek out funding. And that's the reason why we went down this path. So we want to sell them the property and then enter into a 50-year lease with the option of renewal that continuously gives us access to those meeting spaces within the first floor of that building. Next slide, please. So just to give you an overview of what we were planning on doing before and what we get now. So before, like I said, we had the dome, the greenhouses, a chicken coop, garden space, and the kiosk. Now we're getting roughly 3,000 square feet of indoor air-conditioned community space. Still get the dome, drop it down to 1 greenhouse from 2, still have outdoor garden space, and the 24/7 kiosk. And instead of spending $6 million on a building in 5 years, not counting escalation, we get 50 years of leased meeting room space right now for nothing. The lease space for this type of space in this area is about $70,500 a year. So you can see that after 50 years, we start to exceed the value of the property quite dramatically. Next slide, please. So there are a couple of risks in getting involved with a project like this. And we're right now working through some of those scenarios to just protect us in the off chance that something bad happens. So what we're thinking about right now is, what if Thrive gets their financing and then for some reason defaults on the loan? What happens if they're unable to secure funding in the first place? What happens if they get the building but then for some reason have to sell it? What if they don't use it for the intended purposes? Or what if our partnership just doesn't work? These are all things that we're trying to work with our legal team to put into the sale document and the accompanying lease document that will protect us a little bit. And we will give those things back over to Thrive so that they can do the same thing. We're confident that this partnership is going to work, but we want to make sure that we've covered all of these bases before we enter into something binding. So in your packet, you'll see that we had some approval action recommended both in entering the MOU and entering into the sale agreement. We now think that entering into that sale agreement was a little bit premature, especially considering all of the different factors that we still have to get through. It's going to be a few weeks at least before that sale agreement and the accompanying lease agreement actually have the language that you all need to see in order to be able to support approving it. So what we're requesting is that we get the board's approval to enter into this MOU that indicates that it's our intention to proceed with this sale, and in exchange for I forgot to update the 100 to a 50 at the request of our legal team. We enter into the MOU that says that we're going to do this, and then I will bring a subsequent item for approval of the sale agreement and the lease agreement in the future. But this will allow Thrive to start securing the funding and the financing that they need in order to move forward with their project, which is on a time constraint. And so, yeah, any questions from anybody? That was a lot to go through.
It's very detailed. It was good. I just have a question for the attorney here. Is that legalese or is that just advertising?
Came from me, it's probably a typo.
You can cross out that 100.
Yeah. I just thought maybe it was that. No, it's not some
Yeah.
special word, no.
That's exactly right.
And then, so I noted in the MOU, it says that either party can terminate on 5 days notice. And there isn't, this is just a obligation of the library. We're expressing our intention to cooperate with our new partner. So then our new partner has something to say. No, we have an MOU. This is not just pie in the sky conversations. We really are moving forward.
Exactly.
Accurate. I would love to hear a little more about where Thrive is and where you think you want to go next for the funding and, the timeline to break ground and kind of what are we looking at a couple of steps down the road from what we see today.
Does it matter where I stand? Like, is there a camera somewhere that I should be?
This little owl.
You're fine wherever.
Okay, but it's
Yeah, those are great questions. We have created an investment fund vehicle that allows people to invest, especially if you have a donor advised fund. You can use money from the donor advised fund to invest with us. And there's more details I can share with you about that. But as of right now, we have donor or investor commitments from going up to about 2.1 million. We think for this project, we're looking at a total of about an $8 million build. And in order to get financing, we probably need somewhere between 3 and 4 million in equity or land value plus cash. So once, assuming with improvements that the land might be worth maybe $750,000, that would be considered part of the equity brought to the project. So if we raise about another, bring another 3.25 million to the table, then that would be enough to secure financing with a lending institution. One of them that we're talking to actually right now is America, who we bank with and I've worked with on financing for another project similar to this. So we basically, the short answer is we're looking to raise about another $1 million, and we are having some conversations right now and looking for investors. So I'm pretty confident based on how this has gone in the last 6 months since we started this effort. I'm really optimistic that we'll be able to get there in the next 6 months.
Who are your investors typically?
Right now, they're all local folks. One of them is a business owner. Another one is retired. Another one is a retired clergy member. Yeah, that's kind of, we have 4 investors so far.
And what will their return on investment be?
So for most of them, we're offering a 5% annual return based on kind of like a 5-year grant. One of them, who's our largest investor, we are offering like a percentage of equity based on that percentage that they've invested because they are our largest investor and they kind of kickstarted the whole thing. So that's all part of the math that we're doing is making sure that with the terms that they have, as well as the other funding options that we're working on, that that we would be able to get this project started and within 4 to 5 years, refinance it. Interest rates are high right now. So that's part of our projection is in the next 3 to 4 years. We expect those things won't stay as high as they are, so we know the Fed does not like them there. Then we would refinance it, and then there's value add to building things. Usually things are worth more when they're leased up, at least housing complex is, than what it costs to build. So there's that's the development equity or the development investment return. And that would allow us to get a refinance, cash out the investors, and then Thrive sort of owns the property and manages it free and clear.
Got
With a new loan for perpetuity.
And what happens if the market doesn't work out that way?
If the market doesn't work out that way, then we continue to work with our investors. So far, they've indicated to us that while a 5-year timeline is suitable for them, that they're flexible. They've all said that if it was 6 years or 7 years instead of 5, or if it's 4, they're fine because they're doing it for the mission.
Yeah.
Is there development experience on your board or that Thrive has access to?
Right, so we're working with a developer called Millennium Northwest, who's done a number of other multifamily projects in the area. They've agreed to work with us because they like our mission, and they're going to give us a discounted development rate. Usually it's a percentage of the project, and they're operating with they're going to give us a lower development fee in order to work with us because they're really excited about this project.
We've had a lot of conversations with Anthony Chang, who heads up that organization. And one of the things that I really like about the model that they've pitched with Thrive is that this apartment complex is not just below market rate housing, it's a mix of different types of housing. So not only are you bringing these refugees into contact with just regular old community members, you're able to use those market rate units to be able to afford the subsidized rents for these others. So it's kind of a really smart way to go about it, rather than just the thing that we all want to do, which is give free housing to everybody, but isn't sustainable. They figured out this path to make it actually work in the long term.
Our target is that half the units we build would just be market rate apartments available to anybody in the community. The other half would be, we're targeting about 80% area median income. So we qualify as affordable housing, but not steeply affordable. And part of that is because in working with refugees, we want them close to the market so that if we give them a discount for 2 or 3 years, that's enough time for them to get established. We don't want them to stay in affordable housing forever if they can wean themselves off of it. And so that's part of the structure with the fund or with the rent structures that we have. That's also part of what we focus on in our educational programs and workshops is home ownership and building credit and financial management, budgeting and how to buy a house, all that kind of thing.
What is the value of the land? Like when it was for sale, how much was it?
$685.
And how much will it be sold for in the MOU?
$10.
For the affordable housing part of it, then will there be like a yearly reassessment of income if they're now working and then a plan to turn that over to somebody else with more need?
Right, so it's not specific units. It's not like unit 103 is always affordable. It's that we're looking for a tenant mix.
Right.
And the way we're doing it on the 16 units that I'm managing or that I'm a co-owner in outside of Thrive, but it's been kind of a beta version. We've been running it for 2 years. Is we offer half of the units at market rate, and then the other half was about a 10% discount below market rate. And as apartments come available, we look at the mix. And we give refugees a 2-year discount. So after 2 years, we bring their rents up, obviously making sure that that's affordable to them, but generally it has been. So after 2 years, say I am recently arrived refugee from Ukraine, I move in there, I get my discount for 2 years, but I want to stay even at market rate when my rent goes up. Well, then I stay in my apartment. The next one that comes available, regardless of which room it is, we offer that at the discount so that we maintain that mix. So it's possible over time that might be more refugees than just 50%. But we want 50% of the units to be discounted.
I see, thank you.
In the agreement that you have with the parks, where the parks, you just are leasing it always from the parks.
Mhm.
Why is it not a consideration that you guys would do something like that with Thrive, that rather than selling the land and that you wouldn't say, okay, we'll lease this to you for free and you may build on it?
Well, so the big consideration there was helping Thrive to secure their financing, so that 685 that the property is valued at is something that can be used then for Thrive to secure the financing that they need to build the building. Where if we just lease the space to them, they would not have that in their back pocket, and it would be a much less attractive project for outside financiers to consider.
And ultimately, I mean, the liability that falls more towards us. And as we're looking at models like this, I think, the board has heard, some of the other partnership that we've considered, one with the U District, sort of a similar workforce housing for creative folks, us having sort of similar space in the first floor. I think that this is going to be a big part of what libraries offer in communities. It would be that community gathering space, that place where folks can learn. And I think that this is going to kickstart a lot of interest in what we can offer to the community. And we'd be looking for, mission-aligned entities as well, to do that process. But we have this opportunity and partner that's serendipitously, working towards the same things that we're working towards. But I think ultimately it would be that liability, and we would want them to be able to run their program how they need to for housing.
Yeah.
And it's got a sewer pipe running down
Does the sewer pipe need to be replaced?
So, I mean, to kind of go over what we're asking for today would be the MOU, which is a minimal obligation. It's more of an intention. And that will give us and Thrive enough time to line up some more of these detailed questions that would make you feel a little bit more secure about entering into a sale and lease agreement. So as you're thinking of questions or concerns, feel free to send them my way should the MOU.
Will the library be considered one of the investors then with this sale and be participating in that 5% return?
That's a great question.
We had not discussed that.
I think our return is around the space at this point.
Yeah, over the 50 years, if my calculator is correct, it's around 3.5 million compared to 65, so that might be what we see as the return. But definitely worth.
Wait, say that number again?
It was about 3.5 million.
And in the previous model where you would build in 5 years, it would cost 6 million.
Yeah, 6 million today's
dollars.
So look at probably about a 25-30% escalation on that.
Yeah. So it'd be another buck.
Oh yeah,
Definitely.
oh, yeah.
But do you guys just have a lot of fun with that?
We did. Maybe too much fun.
And Mike Piccolo is comfortable with the issue of gifting both funds, and that this, even though it's a 50-year time horizon, that we were getting our value, that we'll be making sure we're not improving it.
Yeah, Mike has said that from any anybody reasonably looking in would see that the value that we get in this lease space that otherwise wouldn't exist vastly exceeds what we're giving away.
And I don't know if you said that, but it's a 50-year with an option to renew for another 50.
I think I said that before on my
Yeah.
original.
And all of the maintenance will be you all will be responsible for all library maintenance, garden maintenance, maintenance for the entire property, and any updates, any modifications, that's all. And it's like part of the agreement that it will maintain a certain quality.
Those are gonna be some of the details that we're gonna cover in the sale and the subsequent lease agreement. But yes, all of those elements are touched on, we just haven't negotiated them out.
Yeah, just thinking about like the costs, like it's one thing to say, here's the space, and then all the costs to maintain that space.
And we wouldn't be like, maintaining the apartment.
No, right, yeah, I'm thinking the library specifics.
They'll own it, they'll own the land. They'll own the structures that they put on it. We're just leasing at no or little cost the spaces that we'll be using, or that will be maybe not library ownership, but we will have the leasing rights to those. So those we would be expected to maintain. But as far as the land.
So that was my question, is would we, so like a pipe bursts in the garden, that will be replaced by.
That would likely be us.
Just like a lessor, a renter on, spelled out in the agreement what we would be responsible for on those spaces that are leased back to the library.
Well, because if I was renting in an apartment and a pipe in that apartment bursts, I wouldn't necessarily be responsible for that as the person who's renting the space. But again,
Kind of an
I just really
example
dove into the weeds on that.
Well, kind of an example of like
Back up.
we're both renting an apartment and renting a house. So like on the garden plot where our easement is that we installed all the infrastructure, if there was a problem there, it would probably fall to us. If it happened in the event space, that's part of the apartment building, I would be surprised if Brad didn't pick that up.
Yep.
But those are all details that will be worked out and we'll present to you to make sure that all of those concerns are covered.
It's definitely a different model.
Oh, yeah, but
than we're used to. But also very exciting.
and within the like mission of the library, for sure.
Any other questions for right now? I would like to reiterate what Andrew said and encourage everybody that if you think of questions about this is a major decision, and we're kind of going in a different direction now. So feel free to take him up on his offer to take any questions in between now and when we are reconvening to discuss it again. So anyhow, it's pretty exciting. Bold new partnership.
We hope so.
Yeah.
Glad you agree.
Any other discussion? All right, I would entertain a motion to approve the MOU.
I move that we approve the library to enter into an MOU with Thrive.
A second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Thank you. Thank you.
Just saying the best one in town.
All right. Any other additional items to add to our agenda today? No? All right. And anybody signed up for public comment?
There is not. No.
Okay.
No one online either.
All right. Our next regular meeting will be Tuesday, October 17th at the Shadle Park Library. And there is no executive session today. So with that, I will adjourn.